When I was a child, I would often hear this phrase, children are to be seen and not heard. It meant that the child ought not to talk, at least in front of adults. At the time of Jesus, it was even worse. Children not only had not to be heard, they had not even to be seen. And that is why it is understandable that the disciples are behaving like the larger majority of people would have behaved when it came to children. So in the gospel text of today from Mark chapter 10, verses 13 to 16, Jesus gives his disciples and us a lesson on what it means to enter into God's kingdom. The parents of children were bringing their children to Jesus so that he could bless them. Why would they have brought them to Jesus? Because they recognized Jesus as a holy man. They recognized Jesus as a healer, and they simply wanted that Jesus lay his hands on them and bless their children, apparently in the hope of a bright future. The disciples, behaving like everyone and anyone else would have behaved at that time, are preventing the parents. And the use of the imperfect tense indicates that they were consistently preventing the parents, and the parents were as consistent in wanting to bring their children to Jesus. Here, Jesus is indignant. Mark uses this term indignant to indicate that Jesus is quite upset with the behavior of his disciples. And in his indignation, he responds to the disciples by giving them a lesson in discipleship and by giving them a lesson about entry into the kingdom. What does Jesus say about entry into the kingdom? He says that anyone who will not receive the kingdom like a child will never enter it. And so, what does it mean to receive the kingdom as a child? The child is spontaneous, and yes, spontaneity is a quality which we must possess. The child is innocent, and yes, innocence is a quality which we must possess. But above all of these qualities, the child is dependent on the parents. And so, dependence on God is the primary quality not only of a child, but even of a disciple who expects to enter the kingdom. The opposite of being dependent is self-sufficiency, is to say, I have everything, I do not need anything from anyone. It is only the one who is dependent will go to another in his or her need. And therefore, we need to ask ourselves whether we are dependent. And Jesus prefaces this with one of the 15 Amen sayings in the Gospel of Mark. The word Amen, translated sometimes in English as truly, is a word which Mark uses before a very, very important saying of Jesus. And in this context, Jesus uses the word Amen. And so we need to regard this saying as a very important saying. Amen, or truly I say to you, unless you receive the kingdom like a child, you will never enter it. And then, because they were possibly small children, Jesus takes them in his arms, confers a blessing on them, and lets them go. This physical action of Jesus also indicates that Jesus would welcome them. Jesus would not stand on his status. He was a holy man. He was a rabbi. He was a healer. However, despite all of this, he was also a man who would reach out when the need arose. If you were to be asked, which of these three qualities of a child you possess? Spontaneity, innocence, and dependence. Which of these three would you possess? On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you mark your dependence on God?